I could still hear them through the bedroom door, my son and his wife, their voices dropping to whispers the way guilty people do when they think walls are thick enough to keep secrets. They weren't. The house was old, built in 1952, and sound traveled through it like water through cracks. I stood perfectly still in the hallway, one hand pressed against the doorframe, my heart beating slow and heavy in my chest. They were talking about me. Again. "Just one more video," Rachel said, her voice sharp with impatience. "We need to show a pattern of confusion." The lawyer said, 3 incidents, minimum. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," my son Michael answered, quieter, uncertain, in a way that might have been guilt or might have been fear of getting caught. It was hard to tell the difference anymore. "You don't have a choice. That property is worth $4 million. Do you want your mother sitting on that kind of money while we're drowning in debt? She doesn't even understand what she has." I understood perfectly. I understood that the house my late husband and I had purchased for $32,000 in 1978 now sat in a neighborhood that had become one of the most valuable zip codes in Northern Virginia. I understood that Michael's construction business had failed last year, leaving him owing money to people whose patience had limits. And I understood, with a cold clarity that settled into my bones like winter fog, that my own son was building a case to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could take control of everything I owned. The conversation continued, but I had already backed away from the door, moving quietly down the hallway in my house slippers, the ones with the worn soles that made no sound on the hardwood floors. 70 years old, and I was learning to walk like a thief in my own home. I had lived in this house for 46 years, raised Michael here, buried my husband from here, painted these walls a dozen times, always coming back to the same shade of cream because George had loved how the morning light looked against it. Every room held a memory, and now my son wanted to take it from me by telling the world I was too confused to know my own mind. The thing is, I wasn't confused. My hearing had gotten worse, yes. Sometimes I asked people to repeat themselves or misunderstood what they said. My arthritis made me slower, made me reach for the furniture when I walked, made me look unsteady. But my mind was clear as glass, clear enough to know exactly what was happening. Michael and Rachel had moved in 6 months ago, temporarily, they said, just until they got back on their feet. I had welcomed them because I was lonely and because Michael was my only child, and you don't turn away your children when they need help. But temporary had stretched into permanent, and help had turned into something else entirely. They had begun treating my home like it was already theirs, rearranging furniture, painting the guest room without asking, talking about upgrades and renovations as if I weren't standing right there listening. 2 weeks ago, I had come home from my book club to find Rachel filming me with her phone as I walked through the door. "Just capturing memories," she had said, smiling too wide. "You know, for the family archives." But I had seen the way she angled the camera, catching me as I stumbled slightly on the threshold, as I paused to remember where I'd set my keys. Small moments that could be made to look like something they weren't. Yesterday, I had found a folder on the kitchen table, left open as if by accident. Medical consultation request forms, a checklist titled Documenting Cognitive Decline, a printed article about conservatorship proceedings. When I asked Michael about it, he had snatched it away quickly, saying it was nothing, just research he was doing for a friend whose mother had Alzheimer's. My mother did not have Alzheimer's. She had lived to 93 with a mind sharp enough to beat me at chess 2 weeks before she died. I did not have Alzheimer's either, but I was beginning to understand that the truth didn't matter if someone could construct a convincing enough lie. I went to my bedroom and closed the door quietly. My hands shook as I sat on the edge of the bed, the same bed I had shared with George for 38 years before he passed. The room felt smaller suddenly, as if the walls were closing in with the weight of betrayal. I looked at the framed photograph on my nightstand. George and me on our wedding day, both of us so young and certain that love and family were fortresses that couldn't be breached from within. How naive we had been. The next morning, Rachel made me breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, setting the plate in front of me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sleep well, Mom?" she asked. She had started calling me Mom 6 months ago, though we both knew it was performance, not affection. "Fine," I said. I ate slowly, watching her watch me, waiting for something. She was always waiting now, phone nearby, ready to capture whatever moment she could twist into evidence. Michael came down the stairs, his footsteps heavy on the old wood. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes, his jaw tight. He poured himself coffee without looking at me. "Michael," I said carefully, "I'd like to talk to you about something." He turned. And for just a moment I saw my boy in his face, the one who used to climb into my lap when thunderstorms scared him, who had cried against my shoulder when his first girlfriend broke his heart. Then Rachel appeared behind him, and the moment vanished. "What is it, Ma?" "I've been thinking about the house," I said, "about making some changes to the will." The kitchen went very still. Rachel's hand froze halfway to her coffee cup. Michael's eyes narrowed slightly. "What kind of changes?" "I think it's time I put everything in a trust for protection." I kept my voice light, casual, as if this were a simple, practical matter and not a declaration of war. "Protection from what?" Rachel asked, her tone sharp. "Oh, you know, in case something happens to me, I want to make sure everything is handled properly." I smiled at them both, sweet and vague, the way confused old women are expected to smile. Michael set his coffee down with more force than necessary. "Ma, you don't need to worry about that. We're here. We'll take care of everything." "I know, sweetheart. But I'd feel better having it all sorted out legally. I have an appointment with my attorney next week." The lie slipped out easily. I didn't have an appointment, but I would. Rachel's eyes flashed with something cold and calculating. "Maybe we should go with you. These things can be complicated, and you might forget important details." "I'm sure I'll manage," I said quietly. Then I stood, leaving my half-eaten breakfast on the table, and walked out of the kitchen. I could feel their eyes on my back, heavy with the weight of plans unraveling. I spent that day, as I had spent many days recently, sitting in my armchair by the window, watching the street, appearing to drift in and out of awareness the way they expected me to. But inside, my mind was racing, sharp and clear and coldly furious. I thought about everything I needed to do: find a lawyer, document what they were planning, protect myself before they could move forward with whatever legal action they were preparing. That evening, while they thought I was napping, I sat at the small desk in my bedroom and opened the laptop my granddaughter had given me 3 years ago. She had taught me how to use it, patient and kind in the way Rachel and Michael had never been. I searched for attorneys specializing in elder law, read reviews, took notes in careful handwriting on a pad of paper I kept hidden in my nightstand drawer. I found a firm in Alexandria with excellent ratings, led by a woman named Patricia Morrison. The website showed a woman about my age with kind eyes and a stern mouth, someone who looked like she didn't tolerate nonsense. I wrote down the phone number. The next morning, I waited until Rachel left for her part-time job at the boutique, and Michael went to meet with potential clients, always chasing the contract that would save his failed business. The house was finally quiet, just me and the soft tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway, the one that had belonged to George's father. I dialed the number with hands that trembled only slightly. The receptionist who answered had a warm voice. I told her I needed to speak with Miss Morrison about a family matter, something urgent. She asked me to describe the situation briefly. "My son is trying to have me declared incompetent," I said. The words felt strange in my mouth, bitter and foreign. "He doesn't know that I know." There was a pause. Then the receptionist said, "Hold please, Mrs. Whitmore," I said. "Evelyn Whitmore." 3 minutes later, Patricia Morrison was on the line. Her voice was exactly what I needed, professional, calm, and underneath it all, a thread of steel. "Mrs. Whitmore, tell me what's happening." I told her everything. The overheard conversations, the videos, the documents left carelessly open, the way my son and daughter-in-law had been documenting my every stumble, every moment of forgetfulness, building their case piece by piece. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "How is your actual cognitive function?" she asked. "Clear," I said. "I have some hearing loss. I have arthritis. I'm slower than I used to be. But my mind is fine." "Good. Then here's what we're going to do." She outlined a plan with the efficiency of someone who had handled cases like mine before, who knew exactly how predators operated and how to stop them. "I need you to come to my office tomorrow morning. Can you do that without them knowing?" "Yes," I said. "They'll both be out tomorrow between 10 and noon. "Perfect. Bring any documents you can find related to their plans. And Mrs. Whitmore, don't tell them you're doing this. Not yet. The element of surprise is your greatest advantage." When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not peace, exactly, but purpose. A sense that I was no longer just a target, that I had the power to fight back. That night at dinner, Rachel asked me how my day had been. "Quiet," I said. "I watched my shows. Took a nap." She nodded, satisfied, and went back to pushing food around her plate. Michael ate in silence, his jaw working mechanically, eyes distant. I wondered what he was thinking, if he felt any shame at all for what he was planning, or if he had convinced himself this was somehow for my own good, that taking everything from me was an act of love. The next morning, I dressed carefully in a navy dress and my good pearls, the ones George had given me on our 25th anniversary. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a woman who was older than she felt, whose face carried the map of 7 decades of living, but whose eyes were still bright, still aware, still defiant. I looked like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. I left the house at 9:30, telling no one I was leaving. My car, a 10-year-old Toyota that still ran perfectly well, started on the first try. I drove myself to Alexandria, my hands steady on the wheel, my mind clear as morning light. Patricia Morrison's office was in a brick building near the courthouse. The waiting room was elegant, but not ostentatious, with soft chairs and artwork on the walls. The receptionist who had spoken with me on the phone smiled warmly when I gave my name. Patricia came out to meet me herself. She was exactly as her photo had suggested, capable, kind, and absolutely no nonsense. She shook my hand firmly. "Mrs. Whitmore, thank you for coming. Let's talk." Her office was lined with law books and family photographs. She gestured for me to sit in a comfortable chair across from her desk and pulled out a legal pad. "First," she said, "I want to do a brief cognitive assessment. Standard procedure. It will help us establish baseline function if this goes to court." She asked me questions. What year was it? Who was president? To count backward from 100 by sevens, to recall a list of words, to solve simple problems. I answered everything correctly, easily, and watched her make notes with satisfaction in her eyes. "Your cognitive function is excellent," she said. "Now, tell me again, slowly, everything you know about what your son is planning." I went through it all again, in more detail this time. She asked careful questions. Did they have access to my accounts? "No," I said, "not yet." Had I signed any documents recently? No. Did they have power of attorney? No. George and I had set up our estate planning years ago with a different attorney, and nothing had been changed since his death. "Good," she said. "That makes this easier. But we need to act quickly. If they're gathering evidence for an incompetency filing, they may move faster than you think, especially now that you've mentioned changing your will." She explained the legal process to me, how conservatorship cases worked, how they would need to prove I couldn't manage my own affairs. "The burden of proof is on them," she said. "But sometimes, especially with elderly people, judges can be swayed by compelling narratives. Adult children claiming concern for a parent's welfare, backed by carefully edited videos and cherry-picked evidence. We see it more often than you'd think. What do? I asked. "We build our own case. We document your competency thoroughly. medical evaluation, cognitive testing, financial records showing you've been managing your affairs perfectly well, and then we wait for them to make their move, and we counter it. But there's something else we can do too, something more proactive. She leaned forward. I'd like to arrange for a forensic evaluation of your situation. We'll bring in a geriatric psychiatrist who specializes in competency evaluations, someone who can testify, if necessary, that you are of sound mind. Additionally, I'd like to review any videos or documents they've created. Do you have access to them? I thought about the folder I had seen, the videos Rachel had taken. I think so. They keep things on the kitchen computer sometimes. If you can safely get copies without alerting them, do it. But Mrs. Whitmore, be careful. If they realize you know what they're planning, they may accelerate their timeline. I left her office 2 hours later with a plan, a stack of documents to fill out, and appointments scheduled for medical and psychiatric evaluations. I also left with something else. The knowledge that I was not powerless, that the law could protect me if I was smart and careful and strong. When I got home, the house was still empty. I went straight to the computer in the kitchen, the one Michael and Rachel used, but I supposedly didn't know how to operate. I had learned, though, quietly, watching over their shoulders, teaching myself in secret. I opened the folders, my heart pounding, and found what I was looking for. Videos, dozens of them. Me stumbling on the stairs, me asking them to repeat something 3 times, me standing in the kitchen, looking confused about what I had come in for. All carefully dated, carefully labeled. Exhibit A, Exhibit B. Evidence of declining capacity. I plugged in the flash drive I had purchased months ago, foreseeing this moment even if I hadn't wanted to believe it would come. I copied everything, every video, every document, every piece of their carefully constructed case against me. Then I found something else. An email exchange between Rachel and Michael. My hands shook as I read it. Rachel, 1 more month of documentation and we'll have enough. Johnson says we can file by mid-October. Once the court grants conservatorship, we can sell the house and clear our debts. Fresh start. Michael, I still feel bad about this. Rachel, don't. She's not going to remember any of this in 6 months anyway. We're actually doing her a favor. She shouldn't be living alone. She's a danger to herself. Michael, you're right. I know you're right, but he didn't know. I wasn't a danger to anyone except to their plans. I copied the emails too. Everything. Then I cleared the browser history, closed everything carefully, and went to sit in the living room as if I had been there all along. When they came home, I was watching television, or pretending to, my hands folded in my lap, my expression vacant and mild. Rachel breezed past me without a word. Michael paused to pat my shoulder. Good day, Ma. Yes, I said softly. Quiet. I don't remember what I did, really. The days blur together. He nodded, a flash of something crossing his face. Relief, maybe, or guilt? He went upstairs. I sat there until the light faded, until the television was just colored shadows on the wall, and I thought about what came next. I thought about the difference between the mother who had raised Michael, the woman who had sacrificed and supported and loved without conditions, and the woman I needed to become now. Someone who would fight her own son in court to keep her autonomy, her home, her life. The next weeks passed in careful performance. I went to my medical appointments, my psychiatric evaluation, my meetings with Patricia. I played the role of confused old woman at home while building an impenetrable case for my competence everywhere else. Dr. Sarah Chen, the geriatric psychiatrist Patricia had recommended, spent 4 hours with me over 2 sessions. She tested everything: memory, reasoning, judgment, executive function. Mrs. Whitmore, she said, at the end of the 2nd session, you are one of the most cognitively intact 70-year-olds I have ever evaluated. Your hearing loss is genuine and age-appropriate. Your slower physical movement is due to arthritis, also age-appropriate. But your mind is absolutely sound. I will testify to that in any court in this country. I gathered bank statements showing I had been managing my finances perfectly for the 5 years since George died. Bills paid on time. Investments managed conservatively but well. No signs of confusion or poor judgment. Patricia helped me compile everything into a thick folder. Evidence of competence, truth in black and white that couldn't be edited or twisted. Then we waited. Michael and Rachel didn't know I was preparing. They saw what they wanted to see. An old woman drifting through her days, increasingly dependent on them, increasingly ready to be saved from herself. Rachel continued filming me, adding to her collection. Michael continued having hushed conversations with lawyers and doctors, people who would help him take control of my life for my own good. I let them think they were winning. The call came on a Tuesday morning in October, exactly when Rachel's email had predicted. Patricia phoned while I was alone in the house. "They've filed," she said. "Petition for conservatorship on grounds of mental incompetence. There's a hearing scheduled in 3 weeks. Evelyn, are you ready?" I looked around my living room, at the photographs on the walls, at George's chair that still sat in the corner even though no one had sat in it for 5 years. I thought about 46 years of memories held in these walls, of a life I had built and maintained and refused to let anyone take from me. "Yes," I said, "I'm ready." That evening, when Michael came home, he looked nervous. He asked me to sit down, said he had something to tell me. Rachel stood behind him, her arms crossed, her expression carefully arranged into concerned support. "Ma," he said, "I need to talk to you about something important. It's hard, but it's for your own safety." I looked at him with soft, trusting eyes. "What is it, sweetheart?" "I've been worried about you, about your memory, about you living alone here. I've talked to some doctors, and they think maybe you need some help, more help than Rachel and I can give you." "What kind of help?" I asked, my voice small and uncertain. Exactly the voice they expected. "Legal help. Someone to help manage things for you. The house, the finances. It's too much for you to handle alone." "But you'll help me?" I said. "You always help me." His face softened with something that might have been love or might have been triumph. "Of course I will, Ma. I'm your son. I'll take care of everything." "Good," I whispered. Then I stood slowly, steadying myself on the arm of the chair. "I'm tired. I think I'll go to bed." He hugged me, and I let him, and I felt nothing but the cold certainty of what was coming. The hearing was scheduled for early November in the Arlington County Courthouse. Patricia met me there an hour beforehand in a small consultation room. She was carrying 2 briefcases full of documents. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Like I'm about to watch my son try to take everything from me," I said. "So, not great." She smiled grimly. "Well, let's make sure he fails." When we entered the courtroom, Michael and Rachel were already there with their attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. Michael's face went pale when he saw Patricia beside me. This wasn't supposed to happen. I was supposed to show up confused and alone, ready to be saved. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Catherine Silva. She looked at all of us with the tired eyes of someone who had seen too many family fights over money disguised as concern. Michael's attorney went first. He painted a picture of a deteriorating old woman who couldn't remember simple things, who stumbled and fell, who was clearly a danger to herself. He presented the videos Rachel had taken, showing me confused, unsteady, lost. "Your Honor," he said, "Mrs. Whitmore needs help. Her son is simply trying to ensure she receives the care and protection she deserves." Then Patricia stood. She was magnificent. "Your Honor, what we've just seen is a carefully edited compilation designed to make a healthy, capable woman appear incompetent. I'd like to present the court with a complete picture of Mrs. Whitmore's actual condition. She submitted Dr. Chen's psychiatric evaluation. My medical records, the bank statements, affidavits from my book club members, my neighbors, my doctor of 20 years, all testifying that I was sharp, engaged, and fully capable. Then she did something I hadn't expected. She played the videos too, but she played them in full, unedited. In context, they told a completely different story. Yes, I had stumbled on the stairs, but I had caught myself and walked on steadily. Yes, I had asked for something to be repeated, but it was because Rachel had been speaking from another room while running water. The confusion in the kitchen? I had been interrupted mid-task and momentarily distracted, something that happens to people of all ages. These videos, Patricia said, were taken without Mrs. Whitmore's knowledge, by family members who had moved into her home rent-free, who owe her significant financial support over the years, and who stand to inherit a property worth over $4 million if they can gain control of it. She submitted the emails, Rachel's words, cold and calculating on the screen. Once the court grants conservatorship, we can sell the house and clear our debts. The courtroom went very quiet. Then Patricia called me to testify. I walked to the stand slowly but steadily. The judge watched me carefully. Patricia asked me questions. I answered clearly. What was today's date? Who was president? What were my monthly expenses? How long had I lived in my house? What were my plans for the future? Then Michael's attorney cross-examined me. He tried to trip me up, asking rapid-fire questions about dates and details. I answered every single one correctly. He asked if I felt my son was acting against my interests. I looked at Michael, sitting there with his head down, unable to meet my eyes. I believe my son is acting in his own interests, I said quietly. I believe he's convinced himself that's the same as acting in mine. But it isn't. The judge asked Michael to approach. She looked at him for a long moment. Mr. Whitmore, I've reviewed the evidence. I've heard the testimony. Your mother is clearly competent to manage her own affairs. This petition is denied. Michael's face crumpled. Rachel let out a sharp breath beside him. The judge continued. Furthermore, I'm ordering that all videos and documents created without Mrs. Whitmore's consent be destroyed. I'm also recommending that Mrs. Whitmore consider whether she wishes to pursue legal action for attempted financial exploitation. Patricia touched my arm. It's over, she whispered. You won. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like standing in the ruins of something that could never be rebuilt. Outside the courthouse, Michael tried to talk to me. Ma, I'm sorry. I thought I was helping. You thought you needed my money, I said. Not angry, just stating the truth. And you were willing to destroy me to get it. That's not fair, Rachel interjected, her face flushed with anger. We've taken care of you for 6 months. We deserve something. You lived in my home for free, I said calmly. I fed you. I paid your utilities. I helped you the way I've always helped, Michael. But I won't let you take my independence. That's where I draw the line. I turned to Patricia. I'd like them out of my house by the end of the week. She nodded. I'll draft the paperwork. Michael looked stricken. Ma, please, don't do this. I'm your son. I know, I said softly. And then I walked away. Patricia helped me file the eviction notice. Michael and Rachel moved out 3 days later, silently, angrily, taking their belongings and their resentment with them. The house felt empty after they left, but it also felt like mine again. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in my living room when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Michael standing there alone, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his eyes red. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry, Ma. I got scared and desperate, and I let Rachel convince me that you wouldn't remember, that it wouldn't hurt you. But it did hurt you, and I can't take that back. I stood in the doorway looking at my son, at this man I had raised, and I felt 1,000 things at once. Love and betrayal and sadness and a faint, fragile hope. No, I said, you can't take it back. Can you forgive me? I was quiet for a long time. I don't know. Maybe someday. But not today. Today I'm still hurt. Today I'm still angry. And I need you to live with that. He nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. I understand. Michael, I said as he turned to leave. He looked back. Don't come back until you've figured out who you want to be. The son who tried to steal from me, or the man I raised, because you can't be both. He left, and I closed the door, and I stood in my quiet house that was finally, truly mine again. The afternoon light came through the windows, touching the old familiar furniture, the photographs, the memories built into every corner. I wasn't confused. I wasn't incompetent. I was 70 years old and I knew exactly who I was and what I was worth. And I had fought for it, and I had won. And the victory tasted like grief and strength mixed together in equal measure. Weeks turned into months. I changed the locks. I updated my will, putting everything into a trust that would benefit medical research after my death. Michael called a few times. I didn't answer. He sent letters. I read them but didn't respond. Maybe someday there would be a path back to some version of a relationship. But that day wasn't here yet. I joined a support group for elders who had experienced financial exploitation by family members. I discovered I wasn't alone, that this happened more often than anyone wanted to admit. I told my story to people who understood, who nodded with recognition and anger and sad solidarity. And slowly, the house stopped feeling empty and started feeling peaceful. I planted flowers in the garden. I repainted the kitchen, choosing a color I liked instead of the one George had preferred. I lived my life on my terms. One evening, 6 months after the hearing, I sat in George's chair for the first time since he died. It still smelled faintly like him, like Old Spice and coffee. I closed my eyes and whispered, I protected what we built. I protected myself. I hope you're proud. And in the silence that followed, in the quiet of my own home, in the peace I had fought for, I felt like maybe he was. I had learned something important in those months of fighting for my own life, that love without respect is worthless, that family who treats you as a means to an end is not family at all, and that sometimes the strongest thing an old woman can do is refuse to disappear quietly. I was 70 years old. I had survived my husband's death, my son's betrayal, and the attempt to erase my autonomy, and I was still here, still sharp, still standing, still writing my own story in my own house with my own clear, competent mind. If this story sounds familiar, if you've seen it happen to someone you love or feared it might happen to you, remember this. You have the right to your own life, no matter how old you are. You have the right to fight back. You have the right to say no to people who claim they're helping you while reaching for your wallet. And you are never, ever too old to defend your dignity.